Welcome to Proven and Probable, where we deliver mining insights and bullion sales in the form of physical delivery, offshore depositories, and private blockchain distributed ledger technology.
Welcome to Proven and Probable. I'm your host, Maurice Jackson. Joining us for a conversation is Tim Johnson, the president and CEO of Granite Creek Copper. Mr. Johnson, welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, a pleasure to have you back on the program to provide us with some important updates regarding the 100% Stu Copper-Gold silver project located in the prolific Minto Copper district. Before we go any further, Mr. Johnson, for first-time listeners, please introduce us to Granite Creek Copper and what is the opportunity the company presents to the market?
Granite Creek is a member of the metallic group of companies, and why that's significant is that all three companies in the group share a common philosophy and really a common way of doing business. And that philosophy, that way of doing business is to identify a large land position in what we're calling a brownfields district. And in our case, a brownfields district means is something that has already been explored previously, has an operating mine or a near-term operating mine in the district, and it gives us multiple exit strategies. So we don't need to go all the way to a measured and indicated a resource. We can find something that might be interesting to our neighbor. We can make, in our case, we can bring the amount of contained copper in the district up to a point where we start to attract bigger attention to the belt for our benefit and to the other players in the belt as well.
Now, from a macro perspective, can you share the supply and demand fundamentals for copper?
Yeah, I mean, we see a potential deficit in copper moving forward. And, some analysts say that we're in deficit already. We see probably first or second quarter of 2020 being in a real deficit that's going to start to come out on the books of the major analysts. And there's a lot of reasons for that. People point to the electrification of transportation, but we see it as sort of a electrification of a bunch of other things, including, China is creating a middle class, and when you do that, you need an awful lot of copper in vehicles and houses and industry, right? And there's a lot of different metrics driving it, whether it's China or globally, the move from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles. And one of the important points that we see in the copper market is when you do that transition, whether it's houses or vehicles, you actually take a large amount of copper out of the market and you put it in things that might last longer than you would expect. It's not it's not electronics that are getting turned over every year. I mean, we're hearing that some of these electric cars could have 15 to 20-year life. Right, so you take an awful lot of copper and you soak it away in these things, and it's off the market. So the supply has to come up to maintain the global economy.
One of the reasons we have you on the program here is that we believe that copper may very well become one of the most valuable metals on the planet. Copper is going to be consumed in the next, more copper, I should say, is going to be consumed in the next 25 years than all of combined history. And please correct me if I'm wrong, but there's less than 2 weeks supply of copper on hand in the world today. And germane to this point is that a number of copper mines are running out of materials, in which we're witnessing right now among your peers that are in production in the Minto Copper Belt. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, in the Minto Copper Belt itself, the Minto mine, owned by Pembridge, just recently went back into production. They went into production, I believe, somewhere around a 3.5 to 4 year mine life. So that's not a lot. We expect them, because this is a new company, has just recently acquired this asset, so we expect them to be aggressively exploring on their own ground, which is very close to us. To add resources, but we also expect them to have at least half an eye, if not a full eye, towards us and our progress as we build our resources as well. And you're right on sort of the global picture. I mean, even some of the mines that still have resources in Chile, for instance, they've gotten down through the easily extracted material. So they've gone through the oxide, and they're now looking at a sulfide resource that is a lot more expensive to extract, and it's entirely different economics. For instance, with an oxide resource, these big mines in Chile are producing copper at mine site, with the sulfide resources, you're producing a concentrate at mine site that has to be then shipped to a smelter. So we're seeing this transition in a lot of the really large mines that have been producing, for upwards of 50 years, and this transition is going to be significant to our industry.
Sir, for the person listening, how does Granite Creek Copper fit into the narrative?
Okay, so like I said at the top of the show, we're a brownfields project. We've got historic drilling on our ground. And we've also, after we acquired the project in January, we also acquired a large historic database. So we've been able to fast track drill targets and hope to be able to do what we're calling discovery focused drilling next season, where we're taking those drill targets and drilling off a bunch of them and seeing what one is most likely to be able to quickly build a resource. So we see ourselves as an explorer and developer of resources. We don't see ourselves as miners, but you every year you sort of evaluate where you are and see where you're going to go. And I think what we want to do is tie into something and rapidly grow a resource as the copper market turns and as the price starts to push north of $3 to $3.50 a pound. Which is going to make this production decisions and anything that we discover, much easier.
Granite Creek Copper has successfully expanded its footprint in the prolific Minto Copper District by completing a strategic acquisition of 30% in Copper North Mining. Can you share the details with us? Yeah,
so we were approached and have been talking with some of the major shareholders at Copper North. Who run some businesses, and they felt that the shares that they held would be in better hands with us, and that was a good acquisition for us. It gives our shareholders roughly, just under 30% exposure to an already drilled off and identified resource within the copper belt itself. And we think the synergies are really good with whatever we discover on our ground. There's a potential to combine resources at some point and look at what we do with that 30%. Now we're open to either further acquisition or even developing jointly with Copper North. I mean, the possibilities. There's many different possibilities we can do with that interest.
Take us behind the scenes and walk us through on why this was the right acquisition for shareholders and why now.
There's, the copper market has been depressed. Prices have been down around 250 to 260 over the past few months. The resource that Copper North had isn't economic at these prices. So I think, there was a frustration amongst shareholders that maybe they got into early and, they were looking for an exit and they were looking for a block exit. They didn't want to sort of trickle their shares out, and there was really no market for their shares. So, in a share exchange that we did, we in a way offered them an exit strategy. And, we have a little bit longer term view. We see the price of copper starting to turn. And we see, a very strong copper price moving into 2020 and beyond. So for our shareholders, I think it was a very good acquisition, and I think I think you'll see that reflected as the copper price increases, which it should do very well for our share price.
Does this transaction change the thesis on your genetic model and or your exploration model?
Not really. Our focus this field season this year had been on looking for resources that are right close to the claim boundary. So your listeners should know that the two projects owned by Copper North and by us are adjacent, and we see potential just across the claim boundary for extensions of mineralization that's been identified on their ground. So that doesn't really change anything in that regard. I guess we need to look at what further transactions we might make within the belt. It might change our understanding of that a little bit. But our exploration focus isn't going to change, and our development track, I think, is to find combined pounds in the ground that will attract significant players to the belt, whether it's one of the big copper players or a multi-metal player. Once we get to a certain threshold, whether it's Copper North or us or combined, we're going to attract the big players, and that's sort of been our narrative, and that's going to continue to be our narrative.
Speaking of what's next, multi-layered question. What is the next unanswered question for Granite Creek Copper? When can we expect a response, and what determines success?
Our big thing is whether or not we can identify and drill resources, and an initial drill program by us on the project that should start as soon as breakup is completed, so May, June-ish, somewhere in there. We will be seeking a financing in order to raise funds for that in the next few months. Our success is finding something that we can point to and say, yes, we can start to drill off a resource around this, and you'll see that first to second quarter of next year.
Let's review some numbers. Mr. Johnson, please share the capital structure for Granite Creek Copper. Yeah,
so we've got 46 million shares out right now. That was recently bumped up by our acquisition. We issued roughly 10 million shares for the acquisition of the Copper North shares. Currently, we've got about 27 million warrants out at 20 cents, and another 3 million warrants out at 15 cents. So fully diluted, we're at 79 million shares. Insiders and close associates of insiders hold roughly 45% of that, and we think that's we're all very incentivized to work hard and to increase shareholder value.
In closing, Tim, what keeps you up at night that we don't know about?
Extension of the low copper prices that we see now. Like I say, I think they've just started to turn, and hopefully they continue to strengthen throughout the rest of this year and into next year. But if there was a protracted sub 250 copper, it would be very difficult for us. We would have to revise our strategy. I think that's the biggest worry for us. But I think that's it's global markets are going to mitigate that, right? So it's not a lot we can do about that other than just keep an eye on it.
Mr. Johnson, last question. What did I forget to ask?
You've done a really good job. I can't think of a single question you forgot to ask.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you on that compliment.
All right.
For more information regarding Granite Creek Copper, please visit www.gcxcopper.com. For direct inquiries, call 604-235-1982. That number again is 604-235-1982, or you may email info@gcxcopper.com. Granite Creek Copper trades on the TSX-V symbol GCX. Before you make your next bullion purchase, make sure you call me. I'm a licensed representative for Miles Franklin Precious Metals Investments, where we provide a number of options to expand your precious metals portfolio, from physical delivery, offshore depositories, precious metal IRAs, and private blockchain distributed ledger technology. Call me directly at 855-505-1900. That number again is 855-505-1900, or you may email Maurice at milesfranklin.com. Finally, please subscribe to Proven and Probable.com for mining insights and bullion sales. Tim Johnson of Granite Creek Copper, thank you for joining us today on Proven and Probable.
The information presented on Proven and Probable is provided for educational and informational purposes only, without any express or implied warranty of any kind, including warranties of accuracy, completeness, or fitness for any particular purpose. The information is not intended to be and does not constitute financial, investment, or trading advice, or any other advice. You should not make any financial, investment, or trading decision based on any of the information presented without first undertaking independent due diligence and consultation with a professional broker or competent financial advisor.